The colony was a fortress in name only, its metal walls scarred and buckled from years of war. Smoke curled into the air from charred remains of the last skirmish, and the pungent scent of scorched earth clung to everything. The sun dipped low, casting an eerie red glow over the horizon, as if the planet itself bled with the colony's struggle. Sergeant Alex Carter knelt behind the rusted barrier of the North Tower, her gloved hands resting on the cool metal of the Cerberus Mk4 autocannon. The weapon was a beast, 6 barrels of unrelenting fury capable of spitting out 3,000 rounds per minute. She loved and hated it in equal measure. It was a tool of survival, but each pull of the trigger etched more shadows onto her soul. The headset crackled. "Carter, report," came Commander Hale's gravelly voice. "All quiet for now, sir," she said, scanning the perimeter with sharp, hazel eyes. "But it won't last. It never does. Stay sharp." She tapped the side of her helmet and exhaled. Her gaze flickered to the crater-riddled field beyond the wall. The enemy was out there, silent, patient, and relentless. They always came back, adapting and evolving with every encounter. Footsteps thudded behind her. Private Diaz jogged up, his youthful face creased with worry. "Sergeant, you think they'll hit us tonight?" Alex didn't sugarcoat the truth. "Count on it." Diaz swallowed hard. "Great. Just got my armor patched up. Then try not to get shot this time," she said, a ghost of a grin tugging at her lips. The faint sound of wind carried a metallic tang, a warning. Alex's instincts flared. She gripped the autocannon's handles, muscles taut. "Contact," she barked into the comms. North sector, the field erupted in chaos. Shadows peeled away from the dark landscape, revealing the nightmare forms of the enemy. Sleek, chitinous bodies with blade-like appendages gleaming in the fading light. Their movement was fluid and unnatural, like predators born from humanity's worst fears. The first wave hit the mines scattered across the field. Explosions tore through the ground, showering dirt and alien flesh into the air. But it barely slowed them. Fire at will. Commander Hale's voice boomed. Alex didn't need the order. Her fingers squeezed the trigger, and the Cerberus roared to life. The barrel spun, spitting out a stream of red-hot death. The recoil vibrated through her arms, but she held steady, sweeping the gun across the oncoming horde. The air filled with the deafening symphony of gunfire, alien screeches, and the metallic clang of spent casings hitting the floor. Diaz fired from her left, his rifle cutting down a pair of creatures that had slipped past the mines. "They're pushing hard," he shouted. "No kidding," Alex muttered, sweat slicking her brow. A towering beast broke through the smoke, its armor like hide deflecting bullets. Alex adjusted her aim, unloading a concentrated burst into its face. The creature stumbled, black ichor spraying from its shattered skull. "That's right," she growled. "Keep coming." More aliens swarmed the breach. One leapt onto the wall, its claws gouging deep into the metal. Alex swung the Cerberus toward it, but the angle was wrong. "Diaz, 9 o'clock," she snapped. The private spun and emptied his clip into the creature, sending it tumbling back over the edge. "Got it." The onslaught seemed endless. For every alien they cut down, 2 more took its place. Alex's arms burned, but she couldn't let up. Not for a second. "Ammo check," she yelled. "Running low." Diaz called back. Alex grimaced. If they ran dry, the colony was done. Her mind raced, searching for options. "Command, we need reinforcements," she shouted into the comms. "Negative," Hale replied. "We're stretched thin. You have to hold." Her jaw clenched. Typical. It was always up to the grunts on the front line. The Cerberus's barrels glowed red-hot, but Alex kept firing. The pile of alien corpses grew, a grotesque wall of flesh and ichor. The horde faltered, their momentum breaking. "Push them back," she roared. The surviving soldiers rallied, pouring fire into the remaining attackers. One by one, the aliens fell, their screeches fading into silence. When the last creature hit the ground, Alex finally released the trigger. The sudden silence was almost deafening. Her chest heaved, and her arms trembled from the strain. Diaz slumped against the barrier, his face pale but victorious. We did it. For now, Alex said grimly. She knew better than to celebrate too soon. Commander Hale's voice crackled through the comms. Good work, Carter. You held the line. Just doing my job, she replied, though the weight of it pressed heavy on her shoulders. As the smoke cleared, Alex surveyed the battlefield. The price of survival was written in blood and bullet casings. But they were still standing, and as long as they stood, humanity had a chance. She wiped the sweat from her brow and glanced at the Cerberus. The gun was a beast, but it had saved them once again. The laughter had stopped at 3,000 rounds per minute, and Alex was ready for whatever came next. The smell of burning metal and scorched earth lingered in the air as the cleanup began. Medics moved through the chaos, treating the wounded while engineers struggled to reinforce the damaged perimeter. Smoke still curled from the remains of the alien horde, their twisted bodies littering the battlefield like grotesque monuments to the fight. The North Tower stood battered but intact, a grim reminder of the price they paid to hold the line. Alex Carter sat on a dented ammunition crate, methodically cleaning the Cerberus Mk4. Her hands moved with practiced precision, wiping down the overheated barrels and clearing the jammed mechanisms. The gun had saved them, but it had taken everything she had to keep it firing. Her arms ached, her muscles screaming from the prolonged strain. But she ignored the pain, focusing instead on the task at hand. Private Diaz approached, his helmet under one arm. His face was streaked with dirt, and a fresh bandage wrapped around his left forearm. Sergeant, he said, his voice tight, we lost Jenkins and Patel. Alex's hands stilled for a moment. Jenkins had been a joker, always lightening the mood even in the worst situations. Patel was quiet but dependable, never wavering when the fighting got rough. Good soldiers, both of them. Did they go down fighting? She asked quietly. Diaz nodded. Took a few of those bastards with them. Then they did their job, she said, though the weight of their loss pressed heavy on her chest. The base's PA system crackled to life. All personnel report to Command Center for debriefing. Repeat, all personnel to command. Alex stood, slinging her rifle over her shoulder. Let's go, Diaz. The command center was a stark, utilitarian room filled with holographic displays and tactical maps. Commander Hale stood at the center, his expression grim. Officers and squad leaders gathered around, their faces etched with exhaustion. We're in a bad way. Hale began without preamble. The aliens will regroup and hit us again soon. Our defenses are barely holding, and we're down to critical ammo reserves. A murmur rippled through the room. Alex felt the weight of every gaze as Hale continued. We've identified a weapons cache 2 clicks east of the base. It's old, pre-colony tech, but it should still be functional. We need it to survive the next attack. Who's leading the mission? Alex asked, already knowing the answer. You are, Carter, Hale said. Take a team and bring back those supplies. Failure is not an option. Alex's jaw tightened. Understood. Diaz shifted uneasily beside her. Sergeant, that's open ground. We'll be sitting ducks out there. I'm aware, she said, but we don't have a choice. The planet's surface was a wasteland of jagged rocks and ash, the sky a perpetual gray shroud. Alex led the team through the desolate terrain, their movements silent and precise. Diaz, Corporal Vega, and 3 other soldiers followed close behind, their eyes scanning for threats. The tension was palpable. Every shadow seemed to shift, every gust of wind carrying the promise of danger. Alex kept her grip firm on her rifle, ears tuned for the faintest sound. They reached a narrow ravine, the jagged cliffs offering some cover. Alex signaled for the team to halt. Diaz, take point, she ordered. Vega, watch our 6. They moved cautiously through the ravine, the eerie silence amplifying every footstep. Alex's instincts prickled, a cold knot forming in her gut. A faint clicking sound echoed through the rocks. Ambush, she shouted, dropping to one knee and firing. Aliens burst from the shadows, their forms blending seamlessly with the rocky landscape. The team returned fire, the sharp cracks of their rifles cutting through the chaos. Diaz took down 2 creatures with precise shots, but more kept coming. One leaped toward Vega, claws slashing through the air. Alex pivoted, squeezing off a burst that sent the alien crumpling to the ground. "We're pinned," Diaz yelled. "Push forwards," Alex commanded. "Get to higher ground." The team scrambled up the rocky incline, firing as they moved. Alex's pulse pounded in her ears, but she forced herself to stay focused. They couldn't afford to be bogged down here. A creature lunged at her, its blade-like appendages gleaming. She ducked under its swing and drove her rifle but into its torso, sending it staggering back. A quick burst finished it off. "Move!" she barked, leading the charge up the slope. They reached the top, breathless but alive. The aliens regrouped below, their numbers dwindling but still dangerous. "Hold the line," Alex ordered. "Pick your targets." The team formed a defensive line, their rifles cutting down the remaining attackers. The last alien fell with a screech, its body twitching before going still. Silence descended once more. Diaz panted beside her, sweat dripping down his face. "That was close." "Too close," Alex said, scanning the area for any signs of movement. "But we made it." The team regrouped, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and determination. Alex knew the mission was far from over, but they had survived the first trial, and that was a victory in itself. The air was thick with tension as Alex led her team back toward the colony, their footsteps muffled by the ash-strewn terrain. The path was treacherous, winding through jagged outcroppings and uneven ground. Every instinct screamed that danger was near, but there was no turning back. They had secured the weapons cache, a collection of pre-colony tech that could tip the scales in their favor. Now, they just had to get it home. Diaz's voice crackled over the comms. "Sergeant, movement at 2 o'clock. Could be nothing, but..." "It's never nothing," Alex muttered. Eyes up, weapons ready. They tightened their formation, moving with purpose through the desolate landscape. The ravine that had shielded them earlier now felt like a trap. The cliffs on either side loomed like silent sentinels, perfect for an ambush. The first shot came from above, a sizzling energy bolt that scorched the ground inches from Vega's feet. "Contact!" Alex shouted, diving for cover behind a boulder. Aliens swarmed from the cliffs, their chitinous bodies gleaming in the dim light. They moved with unsettling speed, their blade-like appendages slicing through the air. Energy bolts rained down from hidden snipers, forcing the team to scatter. "Suppressive fire," Alex ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos. Diaz and Vega unleashed a torrent of bullets, forcing the attackers to take cover. Alex zeroed in on one of the snipers, her pulse steady as she lined up the shot. One squeeze of the trigger, and the alien's head snapped back, its body tumbling down the cliff. "One down," she reported. "Keep pushing." The team advanced, their movements disciplined despite the relentless assault. Alex's rifle barked as she cut down another attacker. The Cerberus MK-4 was strapped to her back, but there was no time to set it up. This was a fight for speed and precision. An alien leaped from the cliff, its claws aimed at Diaz. Alex's heart clenched as she saw it descending. "Diaz down," she shouted. He hit the ground just in time. Alex fired, her shots tearing through the creature midair. It crumpled beside Diaz, its lifeless body twitching. "Thanks, Sergeant," Diaz gasped. "Stay focused," she said, pulling him to his feet. The aliens were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. But Alex had faced worse. She knew that fear was the enemy's greatest weapon, and she refused to give in. "Vega, grenade," she ordered. "On it." Vega pulled the pin and lobbed the grenade into a cluster of aliens. The explosion rocked the ravine, sending shards of rock and alien flesh flying. The The shockwave bought them a few precious seconds. "Now, move," Alex commanded. They sprinted toward a narrow pass that led out of the ravine. The aliens gave chase, their screeches echoing off the cliffs. Energy bolts zipped past, one grazing Alex's shoulder. Pain flared, but she gritted her teeth and kept moving. The pass opened up into a wide plateau littered with jagged rocks. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than the kill box they'd just escaped. Set up defensive positions. Alex barked. Diaz, cover the left flank. Vega, you're with me? She unslung the Cerberus MK4 and mounted it on a makeshift stand between two boulders. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, locking the barrels into place. "Get ready to hold the line," she said grimly. The aliens poured onto the plateau, a churning wave of death. Alex's finger hovered over the trigger. "Light them up," she growled. The Cerberus roared to life, its barrel spinning as it unleashed a torrent of bullets. The recoil jolted through her arms, but she held steady, sweeping the gun across the horde. The air filled with the deafening symphony of gunfire, spent casings clattering to the ground like metallic rain. Aliens fell in droves, their bodies torn apart by the relentless onslaught. But they kept coming, driven by some primal need to annihilate. "Reloading," Diaz shouted. "Cover him," Alex ordered. Vega laid down suppressive fire, buying Diaz enough time to slam a fresh magazine into his rifle. Alex kept the Cerberus firing, her jaw clenched against the strain. A towering alien broke through the line, its armor deflecting bullets. It charged straight at Alex, its claws gleaming. "Not today," she muttered. She adjusted her aim, unleashing a concentrated burst into its chest. The creature staggered but kept coming. "Diaz, grenade!" she yelled. On it, Diaz hurled the explosive, and the detonation engulfed the creature in a fireball. When the smoke cleared, it was nothing more than a charred husk. The tide was turning. The aliens hesitated, their advance faltering. "Push them back!" Alex roared. The team surged forward, their weapons cutting down the remaining attackers. The plateau was a killing field, littered with the broken bodies of their enemies. When the last alien fell, silence descended once more. Alex's arms trembled as she released the trigger. Her body was drenched in sweat, and her shoulder throbbed from the grazing wound. Diaz staggered over, his face pale but triumphant. "We did it, Sergeant. For now," Alex said, her voice hoarse. "But they'll be back." She surveyed the battlefield, the Cerberus still smoking beside her. The fight had taken everything they had, but they were still standing. And as long as they stood, humanity had a chance. The colony was quiet when Alex and her team returned, the air thick with the aftermath of battle. Smoke still lingered, curling from the scorched earth like spectral fingers. Engineers and medics moved with grim efficiency, patching up defenses and tending to the wounded. The echoes of gunfire had faded, but the scars of the fight remained etched into every surface and every soul. Alex led the team through the main gate, exhaustion dragging at her limbs. The weapons cache they recovered was loaded onto a transport, its hulking form rumbling toward the armory. The mission had been a success, but victory felt fragile, as though it could shatter with the slightest pressure. Commander Hale was waiting near the command center, his expression unreadable. His eyes swept over the team, taking in their injuries and weariness. "Report," he said. "We got the weapons, sir," Alex said. "Took heavy resistance on the way back, but we held the line." Hale's gaze flickered to the bloodstained armor and the scorch marks on their gear. "I can see that. Good work, Sergeant. You and your team earned some downtime." Alex nodded, but the weight on her shoulders didn't lift. "What's the status of the colony?" Hale's expression darkened. "We're holding for now, but just barely. The aliens are adapting faster than we can counter. Intel suggests they'll hit us again within the next 48 hours, and it'll be worse than before. Then we need to hit them first, Alex said, her voice hard. Take the fight to them. Hale arched an eyebrow. You think that's a wise move? No, she admitted, but it's the only move we've got. Sitting here waiting for them to tear down our walls isn't a strategy. It's suicide. The commander was silent for a moment, weighing her words. Finally, he nodded. I'll take it under advisement. In the meantime, get some rest. That's an order. Alex wanted to argue, but she knew it was futile. Hale was right. They needed to be sharp for what came next. She saluted and turned to her team. You're dismissed, she said. Get cleaned up and grab some chow. You've earned it. The soldiers murmured their thanks and trudged off toward the barracks. Diaz lingered for a moment. Sergeant, he said quietly, you really think we can win this? Alex met his gaze, seeing the fear lurking behind his bravado. It was a question she'd asked herself countless times. But leaders didn't have the luxury of doubt. We don't have a choice, she said firmly. We fight and we survive. That's all that matters. Diaz nodded, though his expression remained troubled. See you later, Sergeant. As he walked away, Alex let out a slow breath. The weight of command was heavy, but it was one she bore willingly. Her thoughts drifted to the fallen, Jenkins, Patel, and the others who had given everything to hold the line. Their sacrifice fueled her resolve. She made her way to the armory, where the recovered weapons were being cataloged and tested. The tech was old but functional. Railguns, plasma rifles, and high-yield explosives. It was enough firepower to make a difference, if they used it wisely. The armory chief, a grizzled veteran named Lang, gave her a nod. Hell of a haul, Sergeant. This stuff will give us a fighting chance. Let's hope so, Alex said. How soon can you get it distributed? Give me 6 hours, and it'll be in the hands of every soldier we've got. Make it 4, she said. We might not have 6. Lang grunted. You're as bad as Hale. But fine, 4 hours. Satisfied, Alex left the armory and headed toward the North Tower. The Cerberus MK4 was still mounted there, its barrels blackened from the last fight. She ran a hand over the weapon, feeling the grooves and ridges beneath her fingertips. It had been her lifeline, a beast that demanded blood and sweat in exchange for survival. But it wasn't enough. Not anymore. Her comm unit buzzed. Carter, report to the command center immediately, Hale's voice ordered. I'm on my way, she said, already moving. The command center was bustling with activity. Holographic displays flickered with tactical data, and officers barked orders into comm units. Hale stood at the center, his expression grim. We've got a problem, he said as she approached. What's new? She asked dryly. He ignored the remark. Scouts picked up a massive alien force converging on the colony. ETA is 12 hours. This is it, Carter. If we don't stop them here, we're done. Alex's pulse quickened, but she kept her voice steady. Then we hit them first. I want every available soldier armed and ready. We'll set up kill zones and funnel them into choke points. Hale nodded. Agreed. I'll leave the ground tactics to you. Good, she said, because we're going to need every advantage we can get. The weight of what was coming pressed down on her. But she refused to buckle. They had survived against impossible odds before, and they would do it again, because failure wasn't an option. As she left the command center, Alex's resolve hardened. The laughter had stopped at 3,000 rounds per minute, but she was ready to face whatever came next. And this time, she wouldn't just hold the line. She would break the enemy once and for all.